and see what they're really listening for. They don't know it. Is everybody scared? And they're listening for someone to open them up, get to what they're most scared about, give them clarity, give them expertise, and give them an answer. They're looking for, can I feel trust? Can I feel confidence? Can I feel hope? And I'll just give you a taste of it. People feel trust when they sense that you're transparent and honest and you're just saying things the way it is. Confidence comes from having a process to follow. And by the way, if and when you get these clients, you want to be able to deliver trust, confidence, and hope. And confidence will be, you're telling them, this is not just what we do, this is how we do it and how we work together. And my advice to you is when you're giving people, this is how we work together, connect the dots like Lego blocks. Connect them so that they don't fall through the cracks. When someone says, and he gave me the insight, when you say to someone you care about, how you doing? And they say, great, they're usually good. But when you say to someone, how you doing? And they say, fine, they're not. Amazing observation. And so if you're dealing with someone who says, fine, they're not, and they don't want to talk about it, there's something that we've come up with called the 8 words. And I've done this in presentations to high schools, to the high school students. And I'll say, think of the worst moment you've had in the last week. I'm going to mention 8 words, and then I want each of you to say the word that matches that bad time. And then I go into my NPR voice. I did this with Hollywood High School. And I said, I may not get them right, but anxious, frustrated, depressed, angry, ashamed, alone, lonely, exhausted. So there may have been 9 words. And when I've done this with groups of high schoolers, and I say, this is the surgical empathy. Go to the worst place you felt in the last week and pick the word that matches it. And whenever I've done this, if you can picture this in your mind's eye, when they say the word, they exhale. And they bond to each other. But if you say those 8 words, and you can just look up Goulston suicide, you'll find all sorts of stuff that tells you how to do this. If that person, that child, picks the word, alone, ashamed, the next question is, at its worst, how bad does that get for you? So you're draining the abscess. That's the surgical empathy. They may start to cry because you're helping them, you're giving them relief. And the crying is relief. And they might say, pretty awful. How awful? Remember, say more about the awful. Then the next thing you say is, take me to a time when it was really awful for you in the last week, maybe 2:30 in the morning. And something special happens when you do that, is when someone describes a place that they were going through hell all alone, and they describe it so clearly. Like if your teenager says, well, I couldn't get back to sleep and I was just walking around the house and I was looking for your sleeping pills and I couldn't find them, and yada, yada, yada. When they describe it so clearly that you can see it, they re-feel it. And when they re-feel it, they're not alone. And they will attach to your empathy as opposed to, in the worst case, attaching to death as a way to take the pain of their life away. So I apologize for sharing that, but...
No apology necessary. Thank you.
Well, we all worry about our kids, and our spouses who are going through a rough time. When we're stressed out, our body releases cortisol from the adrenal glands. Cortisol readies our body to deal with stress. And this is all in the Why Cope When You Can Heal book. And what happens is when we have high cortisol, it fiddles with something in our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is part of our emotional brain. And what happens is something called an amygdala hijack. So the high cortisol leads to amygdala hijack, which causes blood to go preferentially to the lower brain to survive and away from the upper brain. So a deer in the headlights literally has no blood going up into the head, and because you're doing something to survive. Now, what people don't know is the antidote, and mindfulness and meditation can calm you down, but the antidote for high cortisol is oxytocin. And oxytocin is when you cause someone to feel felt, not just understood. And when someone feels felt, they cry with relief. The amygdala settles down, cortisol settles down, and their blood flow goes back up to their upper thinking brain. And they can have a rational conversation with you. For instance, here's a take home, because I assume that the majority of the people on this call tend to deal with relationship issues with solutions and advice that sometimes the other person doesn't want. And you're doing it because you don't want the situation to go out of control, and so you both drown. So you try to be helpful with solutions and advice that they don't want, because really what they want is they want to feel felt by you so they can have a surge of oxytocin. And if they feel felt by you instead of solved by you, which actually increases their stress, when they feel felt by you, their oxytocin goes up, their cortisol goes down, their amygdala settles down, their blood goes up to their brain, and they can have a rational conversation. So here's a tip you can take if you tend to be a problem solver as your way of dealing with personal relationships. Say to your partner or your teenager, at my absolute worst, how awful am I capable of making you feel about yourself or us? And does it ever reach the point where you think the biggest mistake you've ever made was being married to me? And then you listen to whatever they say. They're going to take a double take. I mean, literally their head's going to flip back. But if you say that, you're not there to get into a debate, and they tell you what it was, and then you look them in the eye, because they're going to look away from you because you just surprised them with incredible intimacy. And you're going to say, look at me, this is important. You deserve better than that. I'm sorry, and I'm going to fix it. And one of the people I coached, one of the executive entrepreneurs, he said to his spouse, "Why do you stay with me?" And she looked at him after he did the empathic drain, and she said, "You're really a good guy. You're just a jerk. But you're really a good guy." And then he said, well, you deserve better, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to fix this. Changed everything.
Thank you.
And in the book, Just Listen, the technique is to say to someone, and this is why it's called the magic paradox. I'll bet you sometimes feel that nobody knows what it's like to be in such a mess and have this be your only option. Isn't that true? I'll bet you sometimes feel that nobody knows what it's like to be in a real mess and have this as your only option. Isn't that true? So that's inviting a yes. Yes, that's true. Yes, you know, and nobody gives a expletive. And then I think in the book Just Listen, the follow-up was, and I'll bet you sometimes feel that nobody knows what it's like to start every day and feel that nothing's going to go right. Yeah, and that's true too. But can you see what's happening? The process is you're drawing them into the oxytocin. And I'll tell you, I know many of you are thinking like, well, you can do that. You're a psychologist. You've been doing this for psychiatrists for 40 years. I am telling you, once you do this pivot, I'll give you something that's funny. It does use one expletive, but hopefully I'll get away with it. So if you have a teenager who won't do their homework, especially if it's junior year, and they just won't do it. They're doing video games, they're blowing it off. And frequently, whether it's right or wrong, the mom is assigned to deal with it. Because the dad will just say, I don't know how to deal with the kid. You deal with the kid. You know, because men aren't that good with these kinds of conversations. So in Talking to Crazy, I talk about this thing called mediated catharsis. I would now change it to surgical empathy. So here's the scenario. And a mother did this, and she said it was magical. She knocked on her teenager's door, who wasn't doing his homework, and said, can I come in? And I think he said, what? He didn't even say fine. He said, what? And so she said, I want to talk to you about the homework thing, something that might, make it better. Okay. So she comes in, and this is, again, surgical empathy, but with an expletive twist, so you'll have to forgive me. And she doesn't swear. She says, honey, could you look at me and say the following? Huh? And she looked him straight in the eye. Say, could you say this to me? Mom, about the homework, could you get off my fucking back? Because every time you come in here and you tell me to do it, the last thing I want to do is my homework. And I'll tell you, as soon as you leave, I flip you off and I'm on my video games. So could you give it a break, Mom? Huh? So, honey, could you say that to me? And then he started, and then she said, no, you can do better. And what happened is he finally got it off his chest. And see, something you don't know about teenagers, but this won't surprise what I'm going to tell you. There is a level of anger and rage that teenagers have towards their parents that chills the teenager. They don't know why they're so rageful. But they just are, but it scares them. And then when a parent annoys them, they think they're going to really say something really awful. And so that takes a lot of energy. So by doing this mediated catharsis, by doing surgical empathy and giving him the words that would normally cause a timeout, he got it off his chest. He felt grateful because now he didn't hate his parents. And because he felt grateful, he did his homework. Can you see how that works? I mean, it's using irony in various ways.